Welcome to the People Leaders Podcast, the audio resource for managers and business leaders creating high-performing teams. Join leadership and team development experts Jan and Michelle Turkelson each week as they explore both subjects from every angle. Through practical tips, valuable insights, and compelling interviews with leadership experts around the world, you'll learn how to bring out the best in your staff and how to give your best as a leader.
How are we? Excellent. All right, what are we doing today? So we are very excited about this particular podcast because we are moving into our leadership series where we nominate a leader, a people leader, who we've either had experience working with or has been recommended. So our last leader that we interviewed was Chief Sam from Vanuatu, which is really interesting, some of the insights that he gave us around what is good leadership and how does he know he's being a good leader. And this time we are sitting in with David Ryan, who's the managing director of a retail water company, which is government owned and has how many employees? About 500 employees. So welcome, David. Hey, David.
Hello. How are we going? I feel like I'm going to be a step down from Chief Sam, but I'll give it my best shot.
Great. And to that point, the reason why we really wanted to interview you is because we have continued to work with City West Water after doing a leadership program, a 6-month leadership program, which was successful based on the feedback and the shifts in behaviour that we've seen. And, part of that was you having the trust in us to do the work that we know that we could do, but also, part of the remit was that you were going to come to every workshop and be present in some way, shape or form. And you did.
You did, yeah. You absolutely lived up to that and exceeded those expectations, actually. And so you really went up in our estimation.
Okay.
Well, that's integrity. Yeah. Doing what you say you're going to do. Yeah. And even when you can't do it, then you actually have that conversation, but you're able to follow through on every point that you made. So, yeah, thank you.
Okay, so let's kick off, Jen.
Okay. So the thing we want to, peel behind is that leadership is so many things. There's a bit of an art and a science to it, but ultimately the good leaders have some type of, passion for it, or they like being a leader. Absolutely. So what do you like about being a leader?
Well, I should say, while it's a science and a passion, it's also I don't think you ever arrive at a destination. This is certainly how I feel. And you say, right, now I'm there. It's just a constant self-improvement, continuous improvement. The things I love about it, you do have this huge capacity to be able to make a difference. And I love seeing that. And in our field, it is, it's absolutely about water and wastewater and essential services for the community. But you also see, your people grow, and that's, as much as anything, that's the bit that I love seeing. Now that also provides its challenges as well, because you then start, the influence you have is so much through others, and you have to sort of put away a little bit of the self-fulfillment that comes from actually, I'm going to do that job. And, it starts to become, I need to empower, I need to grow, I need to develop my people for them to do the great things that we need to do. And that was certainly part of why we got you involved, why we got you both involved to work with our group of leaders, because we could absolutely see that the changes and the growth we needed to have as a business needed to be through our people and needed to be through our leaders. And it was an area we hadn't been putting a lot of time, energy and effort to. And the changes have been profound and will continue to be for our organisation. But I love seeing people grow and develop. It gives me a real kick.
I think that's an interesting point about, you have to influence through others. So getting jobs done through others. So this is the art of delegation and empowerment. So what is the challenge that you have found to be able to do that, to kind of like hand things over?
I think the first thing is I had to actually realise that the things that, I got promoted and like many people, you get promoted into these roles because you can get stuff done.
Yeah.
You know, you're good at doing big, complex projects or managing issues or whatever it may be. And then to have this sudden realisation that, shivers, I'm actually going to rely on others. I have to trust, I have to delegate, and that means at times I'm going to be hanging out in the wind there sometimes. That was a real realisation, and it didn't happen to me the first day. I think it happened after a while when things started to go wrong, or mistakes were getting made and I was making mistakes, and I had to sit back and say, hang on, I've got a very different job here, and the qualities and reasons that I were promoted aren't necessarily going to be the things that are going to help me into the future. And that's what I mean about it's a constant growth development. I'm constantly have to be thinking about, right, what do I need to do to get better?
Right. How do you do that? How do you actually reflect and realise, oh yeah, actually I could do something differently or better next time? Is there a process that you go through at the end of the week, or what happens?
So I think there's a range of things. So for me, exercise is really important in the job that I'm in, and that is where I do a lot of my reflecting. So I'll start off with like many people, whether it's a walk, I'll start with a run. I have a problem at the start of the run. I might never know it's a problem, but it comes to the surface. And then by the end, you think, okay, now I've got a way through. Or I just find just removing myself from the situation and from work is really important. And that's where you just think things through. And often you just, why did that occur? Why did that person respond that way? I still can't understand it. And then you think about it and reflect on it. So it's not necessarily I have a structured time or anything like that, but certainly exercise for me is really important in terms of helping me think and reflect about it.
That's a great strategy.
I hear you. Yeah. Can I just go back to one of the things that you said around the importance of trust? So someone's level of trust, or what their definition of trust is, different to each one depending on your values and beliefs. Can you give us an example of a trust earning behaviour? So how do you know that you trust someone? Or how do you know that you kind of want to develop a more trusting relationship? Because this is such a foundation, isn't it?
Yeah, we find it coming up all the time.
Yeah. It's and it's really complex. And how we all think about trust, and do we give it, straight away at the start, and then people have to work their way, they'll work their way down, or do they have to earn it? I'm more in the realm of, I start from a good place. I think the large majority of people come from a good place, and so start with that trust. But certainly trust, but do things that if you say you're going to do stuff, then get on and get it done. But equally, a big one for me is when things are going wrong, how willing are you to come and have that conversation with me? Now, obviously, that means I have to create that right environment for people to be able to do that. But I'm really big on, no surprises is the old thing. But I also think never waste a crisis as well. And I think if people are coming and talking to you about things that are going wrong, there's huge learning opportunities there. Now, it's sometimes hard to think about that right in the moment, but it's often in those moments that when things are going wrong, when you're relying upon each other, that trust is just so strongly built. And, that's when you see people in their real element as well when things are going wrong. So to do that, you have to be coming and talking about mistakes that are made, things that have gone wrong. People have to be bringing that to the table.
Yeah, that's the litmus test, isn't it? Like someone, you really see someone's true colours when they're being squeezed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's right, because it's easy to be a good leader when you've got the resources and everything's going along really nicely.
When you've got the time,
all of that,
And for me, it makes me reflect a lot on what environment am I creating for my leaders to be able to come and talk to me about that, and then what environment are they creating for their people? Because it's easy to say to somebody, you didn't tell us about it, but if you're not creating that environment where they don't feel safe, then it's a flick back on the leader.
So beautiful. So how do you do that?
Yeah, really tough.
Yeah.
The big one for me is I have to hold my tongue. Right. So if somebody's coming to talk to a senior executive or a senior leader about a mistake that they've made, there's a fair bet that they've probably been awake the night before thinking about it. They've probably rehearsed how they're going to say it, and it's just the nature of many people. I would be doing that in that same situation. So I think it's a case of actually listening, going through and listening to their solutions as well. This is how we might fix it. I am working really hard on saying yes more often, which is and part of that is about the evolution that we're going through as an organisation, where we're wanting to drive more innovation and drive more see people grow and develop, and as you've been involved in, see our leaders develop. And there's nothing more disheartening than a leader who's just constantly no, or it's risk averse, or you're risk averse or whatever. And I think when people are coming to you with issues, and if they're coming with the solution, you've got to back them. Great. Absolutely.
Which leads to, we could go in so many directions there, but it leads to another question about the environment that you are creating. And have there been instances where people have come to you and you have had to have that difficult conversation? And so the question is, could you share a scenario either recently or, in your past where you've had to have that difficult conversation, and what it was like, and what did you do and what did you learn?
Yeah, so without going into the absolute details, specifics, certainly when I was first in a leadership role, we were doing a restructure, and I had to have conversations with staff through that process, some of whose behaviours were not up to scratch, and so we had to manage through that. Those conversations, one in particular, didn't go very well, and primarily because of my lack of really detailed examples of why their behaviours weren't up to scratch. So I went in, I knew what I wanted to talk about the behaviours, but I hadn't really thought about, what examples? And it didn't go well at all. And I wasn't as well prepared as well if the conversation went badly. I hadn't rehearsed it enough in my mind. I was busy, and I was in a leadership role. They just needed to just take my views. Certainly since I've, in this role that I'm in now, we've been through quite a lot of change. I've had to have conversations with senior execs around, with previous senior execs around behaviours, much more better prepared. You're really thinking about, and it's only fair to that person that you should be able to describe, well, what are those behaviours? Here was an example. Here's the impact I saw it have. Here's how it made me feel, or the person you impacted, or whatever. And being really well prepared. I have to be, well prepared and structured for those sorts of conversations. And I think it's only fair to the people you're having the conversation with.
So when you start to think about having the conversation, and you know that you want to have the conversation, do you book a room and tell them that you want to have a conversation? Do you do it on the fly? Do you take them out for coffee? And is it dependent on the person and the relationship?
Yeah, so it depends upon the person. I hate to say it depends on the person, the relationship, and the seriousness of the issue. Something like, and we've had a number of execs leave the organisation since I've been here. That's not a conversation we do at a walk around the block. The first time that I'm starting to see some of those behaviours, that might be where you take someone out for a coffee and say, hey, are you aware of this situation? How do you think that made the person feel, whatever it may be? Here's some strategies we can work on this together. That's more a coffee conversation than a sit down in a formal meeting room. But I think if you're in a senior leadership role, you've got to have capability across all of those. And this is perhaps one of my leadership philosophies for what it is about leadership in context. And I think we hear a lot about, and you'll get asked it when you go for job interviews, what's your leadership style? which I think it's, we've all got preferences, but I just don't think you have that luxury anymore when you're in a senior executive or a senior leadership role to say, this is my leadership style. Because I think you are constantly having to change and adjust that based on who you're dealing with, the context, be it external to the organisation or within the organisation or whatever it is. So I think you've constantly have to be, developing your skills and capability in this area. But equally, we've still got to be ourselves and bring ourselves to those situations. But yeah, that's leadership in context.
Yeah, absolutely.
And isn't that interesting? So, David, you run a large organisation, you've got a lot of complex things going on, and it's still boiling down to having those one-on-one conversations with individuals about, it's about people. So we get things done through people.
Absolutely. So businesses don't do business with business.
Yeah.
It's people.
Yeah.
And it's the same with departments or groups or teams or whatever it is. It is absolutely all about, it's about relationships and how you can improve those relationships, how you can improve performance. I mean, this is the bit that's most fascinating.
Yeah,
this is what makes it the most fun.
Isn't it? Yeah.
And I think, for senior executives and senior leaders, I think the bit about being technically strong, that's just the ticket to the game in many ways. And for many people, it's not even important, to be technically strong. It's then the piece around, the emotional, health you're bringing to the gig. I think there's a huge physical element these days, and I think that's going to get bigger and bigger.
What do you mean? What do you mean the huge physical element?
I just think it's so much more about connecting with people and setting a vision, telling a story, and I see the future of work being more and more in that space. I think the days of a senior exec just sitting at their desk for 14 hours a day, having a range of meetings, it's for the future workforce. They want the vision set. They want you to be able to tell where we're going, how we're going to get there, why should I be part of this organisation, what's my connection to that.
Yeah.
And that's physically demanding. That's a lot of
energy.
You have to be front facing the organisation for a lot of that, and it's emotional commitment, and so all of that is, in my mind, is quite physical.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Hence what we were talking about before. I think your well-being, looking after your well-being, is just so critically important these days.
You go, Jan.
Yeah, so there's 2 points to that, isn't there? Like your physical well-being, and then when you mentioned before is this relationship that you have with others, and also the relationship you have with yourself.
Yep.
So do you have a practice where you do a little bit of self-reflecting, or do you meditate, or what's the other? Do you have a process that balances that?
Yeah, so as I said, exercise for me is really important. So I'm not a huge meditator. So exercise.
Do it, David.
Do it. I know. I should, and many people.
Well, that is his meditation.
I know.
And I also have a bit of I have a trip. I drive for a little bit to get to work. And that's also a period where I leave early in the morning. I reflect. Get ready for the day ahead. Driving home, reflecting on what I have, what's happened during the day. But I think it's also really important to design the job to allow time for those things, and for looking after your health and well-being, because. If you're just constantly going
it's not
flat
sustainable.
out, it's not sustainable, and then your people aren't getting what they need from you.
And even the way the brain works, you need focused activity, and then you need unfocused activity in order for the unconscious to actually integrate all those things that you've been focusing on. So it really is important.
All right, so David, we've got another question regarding people leaders, because we are the people leader people, and you talked about some of the characteristics that you need as a senior leader. What is, if you had to name one characteristic that every people leader should possess, in your opinion, what would that be?
So one, that's a tough one.
Have you got one?
Yeah,
we might let you have two.
Let me go with one. I'll go with curiosity. Yeah, so I think it's really important. And I heard something recently that basically this, the skills and capability that we've all got in our jobs as senior leaders are decaying. Their relevance is decaying. So you constantly need to be replenishing your skills, your capability, your emotional well-being, whatever it may be. So you need to be curious and looking out there and getting inspiration and ideas externally. So that for me is really important. It's podcasts, it's reading, it's talking to people, it's finding out who's doing a really great job and asking them for a coffee. I can't get over how giving people in senior roles are. And I still am, reasonably nervous sometimes about ringing somebody up or asking them for a coffee, or someone mentioned your name, you're a transformational leader, let's catch up. And they just get, an hour later and they're still talking, and you're like, why has it taken me so long to ask them for a catch up?
Great. Okay, that's
so if you were to put that out to someone, that's the opportunity or the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. And you'll find people will be so giving.
So give us what you would say to them. Just give us an example of what you would say.
To
set up a meeting.
Well, I had one during the week. I met with a very senior exec who's had a long career, and I walked up to him and said, I've been given your name, and you've been described as a transformational leader, both by the person who'd recommended this person and also by the staff who've worked for you. I said, would you mind catching up for a coffee with me? And straight away, absolutely. Like, didn't know me from a bar of soap.
And what did you get from that?
From that discussion? Inspiration.
Right.
Challenge. I'm at a stage, I've been 2 years into my job, and I'm thinking, right, how am I reinventing myself? What's the next piece of drive, both for me, but more importantly for this organisation? And so that was really how I framed the discussion with this person. But we ended up going into a whole range of different directions because they understand the job and the pressure and the role that you're in.
So would you do anything differently, or have you tweaked anything as a result of that? When we say inspiration, was it just energy to go, I'm in the right direction, I'm heading there?
No, it really challenged me around, am I getting out and telling the story enough for my people, as an example? So, just before this podcast, I had 10 minutes gap. So I made sure, right, bang, I'm up, walking the floors, talking to people, having a discussion. What are you working on here? All those sorts of things, because it just it's inspiration, but it also triggers. There's got to be practical stuff that comes out of it. So it's more than just I'm feeling great about myself. And if you can't pick up an idea or two from some of those people, then you're not listening hard.
That's right. Yeah.
That's right. And then turn it into an action.
Absolutely.
Okay, so David, the next question is, what's one piece of advice that you would give to someone stepping into a people leader role for the first time?
Yeah, so this would be advice built on personal experience. So what I would say is to go in and be yourself. So number one, absolutely, you have to be yourself. So as I talked about earlier, it's important that you're bringing a range of different tools and to different situations, but you have to do it in your own way. And when I was first promoted onto an executive team, I followed a visionary, transformational, I could think of every other fantastic word, leader, who was a huge mentor and example for me. And I was promoted, Chris Chesterfield was his name. I was promoted after Chris, when Chris left the organisation. And I spent my first probably 6 months trying to be like Chris. Let's be like Chris. And I was never going to be like Chris. And I was disappointed in myself, and then I felt others would be disappointed in me because I wasn't like Chris. And it started to affect my health. And just, small things, I started to develop a tick in my eye, which is really strange, and I wasn't sleeping, I certainly wasn't exercising, because I was just, I was so focused on being like Chris, and he would laugh if he heard me saying this. but it was it was only then through reflection, through talking to others and explaining how I was feeling, that I started to realise, hang on, I just need to be like me. And I'm never going, he had years and years of experience. And it was once I started to have a bit more faith in why I'm in the gig and to try some of my own things and to do it my way, that I started to feel better. I think I know that my people who are my leaders started to feel better as a result of that. I was actually doing the job I was in there to do instead of trying to be something that I was never going to be. So go in and be yourself would be the number one. That was the number one lesson that I learned.
That's great. Like, your body doesn't lie, does it? When things aren't working.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I suppose when you mentioned, people perhaps gave you feedback around how you were operating, I think that's a really key skill to have, is to have that conversation. So, can you give us a tip or a strategy regarding feedback?
That's a big one because it can be really tough. And I'm talking about both giving and receiving. I think in terms of giving, when I was able to just say to myself that it's actually of more value to the person that I'm giving this to if I'm really upfront and give them real examples and all. Before, as I said, I've made all the mistakes that you possibly could, and some of that is I'm just trying to look after this person and not be too sort of upfront, when all you're really being is, in some ways, is dishonest. When they'll actually get so much more out of it if you're well prepared, well structured, but you're upfront. That's whether it's both good or bad. And there's no doubt I need to focus more on my high achievers as well, giving them more and more feedback. And then the receiving bit is close the mouth, open the ears. It's hard. It really is, but I work, as we were talking earlier, I think if somebody's giving me feedback, they've probably thought about it for a little while. I'd love to say that they just walked in here off the cuff, but often people have, they've really taken their time to think about it, so you need to treat that with the respect.
So what's the latest feedback that you've received?
Shivers, what's the latest feedback? Oh, I had some yesterday that one of my exec teams were having discussion around feedback, and feedback for me is that he's starting to see me change how I'm doing my role with the executive team, which, as I said, I'm evolving and changing my role, and as the organisation is evolving and changing and our culture's building and our leadership is building, which means that I can now spend more time focusing externally. It was, really, it was great to get that feedback from my exec, that he's actually one of my execs. He's actually seeing that change, because it's something I'm really consciously working on.
Isn't that funny? Because it actually takes a while for people to notice that changes are occurring. And so that's what I want to say to people: hang in there, because you just need to give it some time, and then people will start to notice the differences.
Absolutely.
It will come. Our bonus question, Jan.
Okay.
So our bonus question: what's one practical strategy that you've used and found useful that you're happy to share with the people listening? And it could be something in terms of communication, how you deal with anything. Just a practical one that they might think, oh yeah, I could use that.
No, well, I think I still think it's the piece around looking after your health. I think any leadership program, maybe 5 to 10 years ago, let's say 10 years ago, it was about the technical elements of leadership. There wouldn't be a very good leadership program these days that doesn't have some element of well-being, physical health, whatever it is, because I think everyone's realised that these jobs, I do talk to our senior leaders here that senior leadership can be bad for your health. It should come with a health warning in some ways, but you can absolutely overcome that, and you can get so much better at looking after yourself, and it will have a profound impact on your role as a leader, and it also will set a great example for your people as well.
Totally. You role model that, don't you, as leaders?
So summing up, I've been taking notes.
Okay, go for it.
And the thing, so thank you, David. The things that really resonated for me was, first, have the conversation. You know, when things are going wrong, just the courage. This is where courage is so important, is have the conversation.
You get in early.
And to that point is that, what is the value that I am delivering to this person, to have the conversation, to give them the feedback. And this characteristic of curiosity, because there's no judgment in curiosity. It's a very open, learning, inviting energy around it. So they're the three things that, you know, I wanted to share and say thank you.
And thank you, David. It was easy and enjoyable, like we knew it would. And again,
we just encourage everyone who's listening to this, you know, like, what is the takeaway that you can actually start to apply in the physical realm? Because otherwise it's just, you know, listening to some good ideas, but you will make a difference in your life and with your people when you actually action it.
That's right, move into action. That's the challenge. And give us some feedback, like we always say. Tell us how you're going. We're really interested. Okay, thanks, David.
Great, thank you.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the People Leaders Podcast. For show notes and other resources, please visit us at peopleleaderspodcast.com. And while you're there, you can subscribe for future episodes so you can continue your own leadership journey. And please be sure to share this and other episodes with your friends and colleagues. The People Leaders Podcast is brought to you by the Experts on Air Podcast Network.